NBA Hangtime for the arcade is an all-time classic.
Raises up. And it holds out. Takes it to the hoop.
I seriously love playing this game.
Rodman goes under a stump.
There are tons of different gameplay options. And the game flows really well too. And like I said before, the Sega Genesis port is absolutely awesome. This port looks clean and it plays great. I still think that this is the best basketball game on the Genesis, no questions asked.
Incredible!
And so naturally I had my hopes up for the Super Nintendo port. And it makes sense, right? Yeah, I know, Genesis does what Nintendo don't. But the Super Nintendo had good games too, right? And it had those Mode 7 graphics, and I was thinking, imagine what Midway could do with those, especially now that Acclaim was out of the way. So back in late 1996, my friends and I were obsessed with Nintendo Power. So since we were literally 12 years old, all the humor, the in-your-face part of youth culture at the time, it really appealed to us. And as you know, 1996 was the year that the Nintendo 64 came out, and everybody wanted one of those. It seemed like everything in the video game world had just turned to 3D, even Nintendo Power, which featured 3D sprites in every single game that it reviewed. And so naturally, we thought that NBA Hangtime for the Super Nintendo would be awesome after we read this in-depth review. Though the graphic design looks like utter garbage today, this was really cool if you were in middle school and had acne. So the funny thing about this is I don't remember knowing anybody who actually owned this game. I mean, we would play NBA Jam Tournament Edition for the Super Nintendo if we wanted to play like a sports game. If somebody had Hangtime at home, they usually had it on like the N64, was one of those rich kids. And so the Super Nintendo version of Hangtime was always kind of like this myth in my mind. I never really played it. And let me tell you, when I did finally get the chance to play it, I found out that it's just a pile of garbage. I don't even need to tell you how bad the graphics are.
Passes for two. Scores.
Just look at it. I've read articles where people have said that the 16-bit versions of Hangtime are cool because you can see the players' faces. Well, apparently they weren't talking about the Super Nintendo version.
For three. Passes for three.
So you want to talk about Genesis does what Nintendo don't? Alright, let's compare both versions of Hangtime one at a time. You tell me which one looks better. Alright, here's the Super NES version.
Passes. Raises up. Scores.
And here's the Genesis version.
A pull-up jumper.
Seriously, it doesn't matter which gameplay highlight I clip for you.
Scores.
The difference here is obvious.
For two. Score.
The Super Nintendo version looks like some sprite experiment gone wrong.
Scores.
The Genesis version looks clean and professional.
He jams it in.
Yeah, that Super Nintendo version, it super sucks. But why? I mean, did they not give it the extra memory that they gave to the Genesis version? Did they have like a team of new hires working on the port? Were they too busy with the N64 version? Or did they pull an Acclaim and just slap a bunch of garbage together and expect people to pay big bucks for it? At least the game has music.
For two. Scores.
That's better than the Super Nintendo version of NBA Jam for sure.
Yeah.
Even Tournament Edition didn't have any music.
He's on fire.
It's like playing basketball in a church.
Yeah.
But the sound in Hangtime on the Super NES is garbage.
Passes. He's heating up.
The announcer says the same things over and over again.
Passes. Passes. Scores.
Seriously, this pisses me off.
Passes. He's heating up.
Okay, I know that there was limited room in the cart. It's not like today where, you get your game and download your updates and blah, 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 right? But it's certainly the case that there was room in this cartridge for more than like 6 different sayings, right? I mean, because you had more variety in freaking like the first NBA Jam. And if you legitimately only have room for 6 voice samples, why not have some silence? I mean, that's what Acclaim did, you know? Sometimes you don't need the commentator to tell you what you just saw, especially not after like every freaking pass. You won't believe this, but the control in this game sucks as well.
Raises up. Scores.
Y shoots and both B and X pass. The A button does absolutely nothing. There's no way to change away from the default controls in the menu either. That's hilarious, since you can change the controls in the Genesis port. Like, what? Seriously, you can't even change the controls in this game? What is this, like the North Korean version of NBA Jam? What idiot at Midway thought that it would be a good idea to change the controls from what everybody was used to with NBA Jam and then make it so you couldn't change it again? I mean, like, what's going on? It's almost impossible to dunk in this game.
He's on fire.
For some reason, you have to be on the right spot of the floor to dunk. The lack of scaling also means that you usually don't know how far you are from the basket.
Scores.
And that is a major problem.
Scores.
Alright, so yeah, I know the Super Nintendo wasn't a fancy system like the 32X or the N64 or like, I guess, the Neo Geo or whatever. But I mean, even the Neo Geo had problems with sprite scaling. Now, I know that the Super NES couldn't do the sort of sprite scaling that, you know, NBA Jam could do in the arcade, at least not out of the box. But the more of these games that I play, the more that I still wonder about this limitation. Let me show you why. Alright, this game is Capcom's MVP Football, also for the Super NES. I just did a review of this game on my football channel. You can go check it out if you want. Anyway, as you can clearly see, the field is able to scale in front of you. It's obvious in every single passing play. The player sprites get smaller accordingly. And it's not like this was some super game that cost millions of dollars to make either. This game came out in 1993, years before NBA Hangtime. So I've read a bit about scaling on the Super Nintendo. I understand that there were some visual tricks that companies would do to achieve that sensation. Now, just so you know, I'm not an engineer. Obviously, if I were an engineer, I probably wouldn't be making these videos, right? But, you know, my understanding is that the actual sprite scaling that you can do in games like NBA Jam in the arcade was totally impossible on the Super Nintendo. But there were ways to have a similar effect, including in different sports games I just showed you. So, like, it's almost like the developers of the Super Nintendo port learned nothing from any of the other games about the graphic possibilities of the Super Nintendo. You see, the nice thing about Capcom's MVP Football is that it looks clean. It's easy to see what's happening. You get the same feeling in a game like NBA Live 96, which came out a year before Hangtime. Now, this NBA Live game isn't my favorite, but the graphics and animation look a lot better than Hangtime. I just get the feeling that they weren't trying with this Hangtime game.
For three.
In fact, I actually think NBA Jam Tournament Edition for the Game Gear is better than Hangtime for the Super Nintendo. At least I can see what I'm doing when I play the Game Gear version. The port just feels so narrow in the Super NES version of Hangtime, it just drives me nuts. So you want to know the worst part about all this is? The worst part is that Hangtime was one of the last Super Nintendo games released anywhere in the world. It's like, I think there's like 13 games after, something like that. So here you have a classic console in its twilight years. And so what do? You release a game that takes advantage of none of its visual capabilities. It doesn't even let you set your own freaking controls. I mean, what? Anyway, this game is awful. It's just simply awful.
For two.
I never want to play this again.
For three. Pass it. For three.
Do me a favor, stick with the Genesis version.
Incredible.
This is what 16-bit Hangtime is all about. The Super NES version is an abomination.
Scores! Passes for 3.
Well, in the end, the commercials were right. Genesis really does what Nintendo don't.